15 years, blowing the doors off the competition. Podcasting to planet Earth.
PNRNetworks.com.
This podcast is a member of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry. No E's. That's Blueberry, BLUBRRY.com. Blueberry.com.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
That meteor is 5 miles wide and it's definitely going to hit us.
Are you ready to go back to Titanic?
You'll kill yourself or nothing if you explode that bomb.
Something hit us! All the flight crew is either dead or badly injured. Oh my God, help us!
Last summer, 2 comets were discovered that are on a collision course with Earth.
Oh my God.
It seems the worst is over.
You've just been sucked into the Catastrophe Vortex with T.C. Kirkham. Time to take another look at one of those originally just thought Hollywood pantheons, the disaster film, and everything around them. Hi, welcome to Catastrophe Vortex 2.0. I'm T.C. Kirkham, your master of disaster, and we are here discussing a new and different disaster film every week or every other week as we get a chance to do it. And as we are moving forward with our second season, we're going to go forward to a different place. Now, everybody knows that America has become the king of these kind of movies. Japan's had a few of them. But over the last decade, the real big player in really good disaster films has not been the U.S., it has not been Japan, it has been Norway. And we're headed back to Norway for a sequel to the very first disaster film the country ever did, 2015's The Wave. This time, we visit the same family in a new place and a new disaster. It's 2018's sequel, The Quake.
Oslo har opplevd dette før. Nå skjer det igjen. Lanserte ikke samme styrken som i 1904.
Directed by John Andreas Anderson, The Quake is the sequel to the 2015 film The Wave and features the same cast. Quite often, you don't find the same cast in a disaster film. It's been done as a thread through the airport movies. George Kennedy played Joe Petroni in all 4 films, even though he changed jobs from each film. But unlike American films, this one actually does have much of the same cast, including Christopher Genre as Christian Elvgaard, a geologist, and Dalkorp as his wife Uden, Jonas Hoff Oftbrow as eldest child Sondre, and Edith Hagerud Sand as daughter Julia. They first made their appearance in The Wave when they were living in the town of Geringer, and it was devastated by a tsunami caused by a rock fall. If you're not familiar with that movie, you don't really need to see it to understand this film, but it doesn't hurt either because The Wave is quite simply the best disaster film of the 2010s, and you definitely should see it. And this one is in the top 3. As the movie takes place, we get to see several years pass by. It opens a year after the disaster as it was portrayed in The Wave, with Christian Elford preparing to appear on a talk show where he is being hailed as a hero for saving hundreds of lives in the disaster that happened in Geringer when that rock fall happened and created the giant tsunami. He's not comfortable with that. In fact, he's haunted by what happened and the fact that he was unable to save more people and almost lost the lives of his wife and his son. It was quite a scary experience for him. And as he appears on this show, we can see that he's not the same man that appeared in that first film. He's devastated. He's deeply changed. And 3 years later, we move forward, and Christian and his wife, Uden, are now separated. He is still living in Geringer, which has now been mostly rebuilt, while Uden and children Sandra and Julia are now living in Oslo. They are divorcing. The reason is Christian cannot stop obsessing about what happened in Geringer, and he is now looking for disaster wherever he turns. He is a great example of a severe case of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Uden has got a job as a hotel worker at the Radisson Blue Plaza Hotel in Oslo, while Sandra is now in college, and Julia has moved into her preteen years and is doing dance recitals and such. As we get rolling with the movie, Julia is on the way to visit her father for the weekend. She is staying with him in Geringer. She misses him very much, but it becomes very obvious that he's a little distant. They used to be very, very close when she was younger. And she's very disappointed by the fact that he pays very little attention to her. And she gets so upset she requests to go back home. He agrees to take her. He feels bad about it. But during the night, she discovers a room in their old house which is dedicated to the 250 fatalities of the tsunami that occurred 4 years earlier. She confronts her father, and he tells her that he feels responsible for their deaths. She tries to convince him otherwise and decides she does want to stay the weekend, but Christian decides to send her home early anyway. Feigning anger, he calls her distracted. A few weeks later, he gets word of the death of a colleague, another person who is another geologist who researches various things. His name is Conrad Lindblom, and he apparently passed away when a rockfall happened inside the Oslo Fjord tunnel, one of the long tunnels that goes through solid rock to get to different places in the country. He also hadn't checked on anything that his friend had sent him recently, but after hearing of his death, he looks through the papers and decides he needs to investigate what happened, so he travels to Oslo to try and find out. Once he's there, he meets with Conrad's supervisor, Johannes Loberg. Johannes tells Christian that there was nothing to worry about, that his friend had been worried by seismic activity that was actually being caused by a major construction going on in the city, and they had pretty much proved that. Christian isn't too sure about that. He knows his friend was a little bit more careful about things like that, but he accepts it as word, especially when Johannes tells them that he'll call him with any updates if there is any more news. Christian goes to his home, where he meets his daughter, Merit. He discovers more research that Conrad has done, including core samples and a map that has recorded far more serious seismic activity than Johannes was claiming when they visited earlier in the day. He calls Johannes, who pretty much blows him off, but he promises, Dr. Evil quotes, to look into it. Christian shows up unexpectedly at Uden's apartment and runs into Sandra, who is happy to see him, but a little awkward because he's on his way out with his girlfriend. He introduces her. But they're still glad to stay there. Uden is still very tense about their relationship, and he apologizes for sending Julia home early. And he returns the scarf that she inadvertently left there. She invites him to come to Julia's ballet recital the next day, something that she's been doing lately, and he accepts. They talk a little bit about the separation, and it comes down to what really is going on, but they're interrupted by another power outage, the second one that week, according to Uden. They try to replace the fuse, but it doesn't work. She gets a little bit alarmed by some rats. Christian and Uden sort of break the ice that's between them. It's obvious that they still love each other, but don't know how to talk to each other anymore because of his obsessions. And he says that he doesn't blame her for leaving him, but she returns that he left them first. Very awkward scene. The next day, Christian is out doing some more research at his friend's house with Merritt's help, and he convinces Merritt to take him to the tunnel where her father died, which has now been closed by the authorities. It's been closed since the collapse. He goes inside and finds out that his colleague was killed by the collapse in the tunnel he'd been studying, and a core sample that Conrad was attempting to recover when he was there. On his way back to the city, he's called by his wife Uden, who asks where he is. He's missing Julia's recital. Christian tells her he's on the way, but he's distracted when he picks up the core sample and it snaps between his fingers. It shouldn't have done that. It shouldn't have been so fragile because it was made of solid stone. As they're talking, a massive power outage takes out all the electricity in the city, disconnecting their cell phone call, and a small seismic rift goes through and ends up destroying most of the Oslo Opera House where Julia was doing her recital. Uden manages to get Julia out of the building, finding her under a tipped-over table. Thankfully, she's safe. Christian arrives at the opera house only to find police, ambulances, people fleeing the scene. He calls Uden to check on her, and she tells him that she and Julia are already on their way home. Christian offers to come over, and she says that's fine. Christian then has a confrontation with Jonas, smashing the fragile core sample on the ground because he's not listening to him. Jonas tries to calm him down, says the opera house support beams were giving way. That's why there's some of the collapsed. Christian's unable to convince him about the growing seismic activity and tells Merritt to go home. He goes back to see his soon-to-be ex-wife at that point, although, they still, as I said, there's still a lot of love there. They just don't know how to talk to each other. He apologizes for missing Julia's recital, and they ask, they talk, and he finally admits that he can't stop looking for the next disaster. They end up spending the night together, and both Sandra and Julia awaken to find their father standing in the kitchen, and they haven't really seen that much of him, kind of surprised he spent the night. Sandra leaves for his classes at the university. Julia asks Christian if he and Uden are getting back together, to which Christian says he doesn't know. It's clear that he would love to. Merritt, back home, discovers something on her father's computer, which she records, rushes over to the apartment to show Christian. He had her drop him off there. He watches the video, which shows Conrad was using rats to research his theories, and the rats had died due to exposure to toxic gas. He runs to try and get information out to Johannes, and try to stop things from happening, because he comes to the conclusion that everything builds up means a major earthquake, possibly as big as 8.5 on the Richter scale, would hit Oslo later that day. And the precursor movement to that is probably what killed his colleague. He's on his way to try and convince Uden to leave her job at the hotel when everything starts going crazy. There's explosions, there's collapses, there's major earthquakes, and I'm not going to go any further because I want you to see what happens. If you've never seen this film, you can't compare it to movies that don't really have your investment in characters. One thing that I like about the way that Norway has done their first ever push into this genre is that they make you care about the people that are here. You, in The Wave too, but even more so here with The Estrangement, you really grow close and try to feel for Christian and Udin and Sandra and Julia as they try to figure out their lives after the disaster that struck them in Geringer 4 years earlier, and about what they're going through right now in the back third of this film. It has some of the most terrifying scenes I've ever seen in an earthquake-based film. And for a movie, I've got to say this up front. Norway's amazes me with the incredible effects they manage on a budget of 5 million American dollars. The budget for the Wave was the same. The budget for the Quake, just over it, around 5 to 6 million. The effects, particularly what happens when the building next to the hotel falls on it, and the subsequent actions and what happens to the building. It's freaking incredible. I feel bad that the Quake did not get a wider release. The Wave was released in somewhere close to 100 theaters in America. The Quake only was released in 7 for 1 week. We did not get it here in Boston. I got to see the Wave on the big screen. The Quake I had to settle for on demand. It was right. I mean, the second it came that weekend, that Saturday morning, I was up ordering it, ready to continue on the journey that the fjords started on the first film. I cannot praise the people behind these films enough. Not only have both films won a ton of awards, both films were nominated for Best Picture at the Norwegian equivalent of the Oscars. The Wave won several. The Quake won some specialty stuff and also a couple of film festival awards. It had its American premiere at the Fantastic Fest Film Festival in October of 2018. And I'm very happy that I have seen these, because I have been watching disaster films for close to 50 years. I'm 57 years old. I've been a fan. I think the first disaster film I saw was either Airport or The Poseidon Adventure, and I was preteen. So I've been watching these movies for close to 50 years, and I've been fascinated with them. And I would put The Quake and The Wave both in my top 10 disaster films of all time. They're just that well written, that well performed, that well plotted. And you get amazing effects for virtually no budget when you consider that San Andreas, which is a great earthquake film, a great fun earthquake film. I said this last week. It's a great and fun earthquake film, but it cost $250 million to make. And the Quake does it better, and it did it with $5 million. That says a lot. 52 million kronas, Norwegian kronas, whatever. That works out approximately to 5 million. Both of these films are available on Amazon Prime for $2.99 rental fee. If you have one of the subscription services, I don't know which movie it is, The Quake is presently free. The Wave is not. It's currently showing on one of those. But otherwise, $3 a pop, The Wave and The Quake. I would watch both of them if you haven't seen both of them. If you've seen The Wave but not The Quake, order The Quake. It is absolutely splendid. I also need to say that for The Wave, every year, our main series, Subject Cinema, puts out what we call the Rising Stars Honors. It happened on July 4th until 3 years ago when we moved it to Labor Day. Both of the younger performers in these movies, Jonas Hofoftebro, who plays Sandra, and Edith Hagenrud Sand, who plays Julia, have made that list. Now, Edith hasn't done any of the stuff, but Jonas Hofoftebro is starting to really build and do other stuff, mostly in Norwegian films, but he has attracted some attention outside of Norway. These two young actors are fantastic and are really deserving of this. And Christopher Joner, I have seen, he does both English and Norwegian language films. He was in The Revenant. He's done one of the Mission Impossible films. Anne Dahl Torp, who won my Best Actress for The Wave in 2016 when it came out here, is just fantastic. This cast is great. Now, there were rumors a few months ago that they were going to try for a trilogy featuring this same family. That apparently has fallen by the wayside. I guess Christopher has decided 2 big disaster films are enough. The team, however, is still together. Director John Andreas Anderson, who did not do The Wave, he just did The Quake, and the special effects team at Nordisk Film Distribution are currently working on their 3rd disaster film. It is called The North Sea. It is set on the oil platforms. I imagine it is going to be somewhat similar to the real life stuff that was Deepwater Horizon was about. I don't know. No cast has yet been announced because they had to push everything back. It was supposed to be out in 2021. It may get pushed back now because of the COVID outbreak. But I will be there with bells on. These guys know what they're doing. They make incredibly intense films where you care about the plot line, you care about the characters, and you become fans of the people who inhabit those characters. And that is what has happened with me and these 4 wonderful people who get stuck in these horrible positions like they did in The Wave and The Quake, the family Elkjord. It is worth the money. If you have never seen The Quake, please, over this next week, rent it from Amazon.com at $2.99 a pop. Do both of them if you haven't seen The Wave yet, but the Quake is watchable without it. Although you'll get more of the backstory if you watch both. And write to me at cv@PNRNetworks.com and tell me if you agree that these are so well written, so well acted, they deserve the awards they've been have been landing here and there, and they really know how to make this work on a limited budget, that Hollywood should be taking notice and saying, why can't we do that? It's just Hollywood. Hollywood math doesn't add up. 250 million, San Andreas, not a bad film. Not a bad film. 5 million, The Quake, 5 stars. I was a little disappointed I didn't hear from anyone this week about the Watch Mojo list we talked about last time. I really am quite amazed at that list still. I was happy that both The Wave and The Quake made the list. I don't know. It's just, that list just set me off. Next week on Catastrophe Vortex, we're going to dip into the worst of the disaster films over one of the worst over the last decade or so. No, not Geostorm. We're getting there. I still haven't seen Geostorm. I'm dreading watching it, but I will before this second season cycle is up. I think it's scheduled for week 12 or something like that. No, next week we're going to go all the way back to 79 AD and 2014's film about the events that surrounded Mount Vesuvius. And honestly, this is one of those films that we should be doing on our captive audience theater over on Subject Cinema, because it's just so bad. It's hilarious. And it's mostly thanks to a scenery-chewing, outlandishly hilarious performance from Kiefer Sutherland. Next week, 2014's Pompeii. Now, if you're new to Catastrophe Vortex, you can come over to our website at catastrophevortex.com. We have other features besides just what we're talking about on the podcast. I'm working on a few new things I'm going to be posting in the next few weeks that I'm hoping that you guys will help out with. They're projects that could benefit all disaster movie fans. I'm also going to be probably doing an Amazon store of some sort at some time for DVDs and books about disasters that you guys might want to try looking at if you find something you might find interesting. We will also have a few things in our new merch store eventually, but right now our main goal is to get you to become a member of the Patreon Circle. And this is our Patron Circle is $5 a month, and it helps defray costs not just for Catastrophe Vortex, but the whole of PNR Networks, including Subject Cinema, K-Babble, Platinum Rose's Garden, Ring Around the Rosie, all our websites. And it's the cost of one latte. Put aside that one latte and donate it to us. If everybody did that, we'd be doing well enough to do all kinds of things on all of our shows and sites, and we hope that you will take the time to do so at patreon.com/PNR Networks. And don't forget, you get your name on our Patron Circle website, and there'll be perks along the way at some point. So please, don't forget to join the Patron Circle. Don't forget to check out all of our other stuff as well. In addition to Catastrophe Vortex, we have a bunch of other great podcasts. Although our flagship show, Subject Cinema, is taking the summer off, we're going to try and be back on Labor Day. We've kind of been off because of the COVID. There's nothing showing in the theaters. We're presenting a mini-series 3 or 4 times a week called Captive Audience Theater. It's the best of the bad films, the worst of the bad films. It's films that are so bad they're good, so bad they're bad, so bad they're terrifying, and so bad they're hysterical. And you can catch those on the regular Subject Cinema feed at subjectcinema.com. You can also catch my other shows, Tuesday Digidex and 3 Minute Weekend, although 3 Minute Weekend is also on hiatus because it covers new releases in theaters. But Tuesday Digidex, covering the new video releases, is out every Tuesday at also at our website, ecinema1.com, and our main podcast site, 3minuteweekend.libsyn.com. You can subscribe to that too. We also have Platinum Rose's Garden, my wife Kim's show about the television series Supernatural. Ring Around the Rosie, Kim's show about pro wrestling, and believe me, she's been a fan for 30 plus years, and it shows. It's a great show. She also has a terrific ASMR type show called Platinum Rose Roleplay over on YouTube, and you might want to check that out as well. We also have our friends Eric and Valerie Lyon hosting a great pop culture show called K-Babble at kbabble.com. Books, movies, games, and odd things to eat, all from their Missouri point of view. Check them out at kbabble.com. And check out all of our websites as well. eCinema1 checks out the cinema world. eCinema Boston checks out the cinema world in Boston. The Kirkham Report checks out all the music, and now incorporating our blog from a few years ago, Planet Bibliomusica, where we talk about music in bookstores and records and all kinds of stuff. And we also have other sites around, and you can get a full list of them at the bottom in all the show notes, and just click on them and take a look at them. And we hope that you'll take a time to write as well and let us know you're listening and what you think. And that is easily done by going to your email program, typing in cv@pnrnetworks.com and saying, "Hey TC, here's what I think of your show." I hope it's good. Until next week, when we'll venture back to Vesuvius and Pompeii, I'm T.C. Kirkham. We hope your lives will be free of disaster. Until then, we'll see you then.
Years, blowing the doors off the competition, podcasting to planet Earth.
PNRNetworks.com